My sound is not working. Give me just, oh, hang on. Let me explain why I have the nerve, the gall. Okay, let's see if it works now. Someone say, as someone has said in one of my classes several years ago, well, that's not fair. We had to pay to get into your class, and people can watch it free on YouTube. Yeah, well, go see a shrink. Forgive your mother. I know she was mean. Forgive your dad who ran away. I know, but that has nothing to do with me. Anyway, I'm sorry. It has been a long day, hasn't it? A little slap happy. No, if this actually succeeds and actually broadcasts, that means you can go home and watch the whole thing again. You got to be crazy to want anyway. But okay, because I'll probably talk faster than you can hear.
Is that on YouTube then?
It's on YouTube, and if you can remember my name, which is Dan Nelson, which is in the syllabus, you can look me up. Who was that teacher? Dan Nelson, and just do Dan Nelson Art, and you can find me. If you just do Dan Nelson YouTube, you can figure out which one is me. Although, oh, never mind. The Jerry's does have a bunch of Dan Nelson too, so find my channel, find Dan Nelson Art. All right, but I'm not going to worry about, I'm here to teach you, I'm not here to record a video, okay? So if it goes kaput, that's just the way it goes, all right? Trees. Oh, I have wanted to teach this class forever because, like you, I see a lot of bad trees in the world, paintings. Let me, somebody give me that a page, an example of that, the bad tree example. And I'm just going to describe very briefly, and again, nobody in here did any of these, right? Just keep it quiet if you did. I just see that angry look on your face, that's enough. Here's how trees like this happen. Here's how trees like this come into being. I believe I'll paint a tree. Brush, small brush, because branches are small. Yeah, small brush. I'll demonstrate this for you. Skinny brush. I know how you paint. Stick out tongue and paint. Okay, and after about 20, 30, 40 minutes of, you're just flat worn out and say, well, that's enough. And congratulations, woohoo! Your tree, if you're doing really good, has 75 branches on it. Congratulations. The real tree probably has somewhere in the range of 750,000 branches in it. You only missed it by a factor of 10,000-fold, okay? So this is one of the problems with trees, is they're painted the wrong way, like this. Now, okay, wait a minute, because you say, well, Bob, what's his name? Timberlake. Okay, true. Almost everybody that paints like Bob Timberlake is in a funny farm. That's what we called it when I was a kid. What do we call it now? State hospital. They're in there because you drive yourself crazy. My point is, painting like Bob Timberlake drives almost everybody crazy. Hallelujah, Bob Timberlake still got his bubble in the middle. Seems like a nice old man. Good for him. But you will drive yourself crazy. Okay? So it's a wonder he's not crazy. But don't make him your model. If he's your model, you're in the wrong class. Sorry, we'll give you a refund. I was in the wrong class. I'm going to teach you how to paint good trees, and I'm going to, I hope, I'm going to teach you how to paint like a painter, not like whatever this is, tongue painter. Okay, do you understand what I'm doing when I do this? Right? Can anybody relate to that? Anybody done any of that? Is anybody here who's not done that? Be honest, maybe you haven't. Okay, I take you're all guilty, like me? We've all done that? All right, all right. So that's what I want to get away from. Now, we've got, and forgive me, there are 16 people here, and I only made 16 copies. There were supposed to be 15 and one for me, and so I'm going to borrow your outline. You and I are going to share this one. Is that right?
Oh, those are free. Those are
oh, are those extra? Oh, I got my own. Hallelujah. I take it all back. All right, if you would get up page 1. I do want to fly through the, the pedagogical, lecture-y kind of stuff as quickly as I can. And I want to make a general apology caveat before we get started. Some of what I'm going to say tonight, some of you are going to say, this is so dumb. I paid for this? I've known this stuff since I was in 7th grade. because some of you have more introspective, philosophical personalities. That's just the way you are. Way to go. Congratulations. We hate you. I mean, we love you. And some of you don't. So some of you are going to be saying, I've known this stuff since I was, 14. Others of you are going to say, oh my God, I never thought of this in my whole life. Do you understand? So there's differences. So if you're in the first category, my deepest apologies to you for a little while, but try to hang on, because my guess is I'll probably get to something eventually. They say, I never thought of it that way. Okay? And we're going to start by talking about different kinds of trees, common tree shapes for artists. Now, I didn't bring them with me, but believe it or not, I ordered on Amazon 4 books for you guys, how to draw trees. And I didn't bring them because they weren't worth it. Oh, they were okay. I don't mean to be slamming them, but I picked up little tiny bits here and there. But in almost all 4 of those trees, maybe all 4, they went through like this botanical section. Oh, this is a Northeast American birch, and this is a Middle American chestnut. And okay. Now, I like botany, really I do. My mom was one of those moms that had a bug book, a bird book, a tree book, a flower book. Everywhere we went on vacation, she had every kind of book. Oh, look, there's a northern hemlock. I can add that to my list. And I love it. I love my mom, and there's a place for botany. But this is not a place for botany. This is an art class, not a botany class. So I don't give one flippin' whoop or holler for whether it's a birch or a leech or a perch. This is an art class, not a botany class, okay? So if you would, I'm going to encourage you to take notes. Does everybody have something to write with? So you just have to use a brush. You can if you want. Oh, I do have a couple extra pencils. So anybody want one of my pencils? Want to yell? You want a pencil? Oh, not 2. Just a second. If you take that pencil, my dear, you have to take the pencil sharpener that goes with it. Hang on. There, sharpen your own pencil. All right. All right, box number 1. Center stem trees. So we're just going to go fly through this really quickly. And again, forgive me, some of you are going, I know all this stuff. And others, oh, welcome, my dear, come on in. There goes we are sharing again. No, there goes my hand up. There are some trees that have a stem going right up the middle. By the way, if you, like me, if you're ever painting in a town or a city and they planted trees along the sidewalk, I have no idea what kind of tree this is, pin oak, it doesn't matter to me. But I've learned that there's a bunch of trees that go like this. So draw this, please. This is what I'm suggesting that you draw. Part of the reason we're doing this, somebody said, you, my dear, said, I can't draw trees, right? So this is for people that just never know it. Because there's some artists, believe me, there are many artists that a tree is a tree is a tree. And they paint all that. It's just a tree, just a green blob, isn't it? Just a tree, right? Wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is do some quick analysis about, so that's what I call a center stem tree. Next is a ball tree. We're going to have a lot more to say about this later. This is the traditional 6-year-old elementary school tree. Now, of course, we can do better than that because actually the trunk is, has some dimension to it and the ball is very irregular, blah, 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 blah. But ball tree, got it? But not all trees are ball trees. I don't know if you noticed that or not. Some of you did, some of you didn't. Let's do number 3, triangle tree. Now, of course, many coniferous pine trees fall into that category. But in fact, yea, verily, many deciduous trees also take on a triangle-ish shape, okay? This is just, I'm just trying to alert you to some real basic stuff. Okay, next one is spiky trees. The crepe myrtles, by the way, are both a spreading tree and a spiky tree. What I mean by that is the foliage on these trees actually grows along each branch. So there are some trees, I don't care what kind they are, doesn't matter. I'm an artist, like I said, not a botanist. There are trees that follow that pattern. Does that make sense? All right, here comes the magic woman.
I don't know if that's magic tonight.
And are you the late add-on?
Yes.
Good. Be sure, I don't know if your name's on here, make sure to add it if it's not, okay? Are you with me so far? Okay, I'm just trying to expand your sensitivity and your powers of observation. So next time you sit down to look at it, you're plein air painting or you're looking at a photograph, I would like you to say, forgive me for the vanity, but I'd like you to say, oh, that's one of Dan Nelson's spiky trees. You can use somebody better than me if you want. But if nobody's ever pointed this out before, start with me before you move on, okay? Spiky, columnar. Now, by the way, anybody here from the Midwest? Yeah. What? the windbreak tree. I almost know the name of that. It's not cypress, but it's, does anybody know? That's slightly different, but anyway, good enough. There's several different kinds of it. I just had to draw one a little while ago for a client. That's why I should remember what it is. Doesn't matter, I don't care. But they're columnar trees, all right? Next is blobby. Okay, what do we mean by blobby? There are some trees that sort of defy all of these. You can see the branches, and then on the branches are blobs of foliage. So rather hard to describe. It's not any of the others that I've said so far, so I just call it blobby. And finally, spreading. I already mentioned crepe myrtle. So it goes this way. All right? And again, all of that is so elementary. I know, forgive me. Some of you say, this is really stupid class. I can't believe I wasted my money doing this. Others have been saying, I never thought of it in my life. So, yes, ma'am. Question? No. Okay. Got it? All right. We don't need to go over some of those were bare trees, leafy trees. There's just one in particular that I want to zero in on, and that is the ice cream cone. Do you see in the second category down? Okay, second category down, ice cream cone. This will really help you, and this is probably getting to a level of observation that most people don't go quite this deep. You have to be really kooky and do a lot of landscapes before you. So here's my proposition. Going back to the ball tree, which is kind of, if you will, I'm going to call it like the classic deciduous tree. They tend to grow in lumps, in like ice cream on an ice cream cone. So, and this is especially a full mature tree, but just let me explain this and you go, my golly, that's right. And then start looking for these when you're out, especially, as I said, a mature tree out in the wild or out in a farmer's field. So this is a 2-scoop ice cream cone. This is a 2-scoop tree. And what the most important part of this is very often right here in the intersection between the 2 scoops, there'll be more daylight than here and here. And very often major parts of the trunk are visible in the middle, okay? Now again, if you've already know all this, way to go, you're way ahead of the class. Most people have never observed such a thing, but now I want you to start noticing such things. Like, oh my goodness, there's an ice cream cone tree. And just with that level, so just with this level of sophistication, can you imagine how this quick little survey might help you next time it's your job to paint trees? Now, let's go back for just a minute. If you have a hard time painting trees, the answer is, who's in my drawing class? The other, Nancy, you're the only one here that was in my drawing. Why can't people see trees, Nancy? Why can't they see trees? Because, because filing cabinet.
Oh, because of the SOS.
Because the filing cabinet flies open and your childhood super simple survival-oriented symbol, SOS, SSSOS really, but SOS will do. In other words, when you were a little kid, this was a tree. And this is still in your filing cabinet from toddlerhood. And so when you say, I'm doing a landscape, it's got trees in it. As soon as you say the word tree, you can't help it. This little icon, this SOS, flies up in front of your face, and you can be looking at a National Geographic photograph of the most majestic tree in the world. It doesn't matter. You're blinded by this. Literally, it's like trying to look at a picture, and this is hovering before, and after a while you just say, oh, hang it all, and you paint your 5-year-old lollipop tree. Okay, so the reason people can't draw trees is because they're not looking at trees. Okay, so everything I'm going to say tonight could be solved by simple study of trees. But what I'm hoping to do is get you far down the road quickly so that when you do, in fact, go out of here and start looking at trees through whole new eyes, you'll accelerate much quicker than you would have. Fair enough? And of course, in the last half of the class, we're going to actually talk about technique for painting trees, which is sort of a different thing than seeing trees. All right? Are you with me so far? So we've been through the first two rows rather quickly. Now, B, I want to get a little bit more analytical for you again and explain, like a big word, morphology. I had to look it up to make sure I was using it rightly, and I was. I said, I think this is the right word. Morphology is why something is shaped the way it is. How is it developed this way? Box A. I call it trunks, boughs, branches, and twigs. Again, you know all this, but let's just review it really quickly. So there's a trunk, then there's really big branches, like a bough, and then there's branches, and then, I'm sorry, I need to get smaller, and then there's twigs, right? From big to little, you know that already. But generally speaking, not absolutely, but generally speaking, twigs, that's called, by the way, called a feeder. Is anybody here in agriculture? Anybody here a farmer or a fruit farmer? That's a sucker or a feeder, and you cut those off. But generally speaking, when you're painting a tree, twigs don't grow on trunks. Twigs don't even grow so much on boughs. Twigs grow on branches. Right? So just be aware of that. And again, I know you know that, but they start out, conventional tree starts big, then boughs, then branches, then twigs. And when I said earlier there are 175,000, I was talking twigs. I mean, there's 100,000 twigs on almost any tree you can look at. Just do the math. How many branches and how many twigs per branch and so on and so on and so forth. So that's first, and I want you to, if you can, sketch that on this little handout that you've got there, but you don't need to. All right, B, this is getting a little bit more technical, so hang on. Should I? No, I'll draw this again. Uniform weight. Let me see if I can do a real quick, big. Again, we're talking at the moment, obviously, about kind of the classic tree, deciduous, oak, maple, elm. Although elm has more of a shape. I do know what an elm shape is like, but it's the other word I'm looking for. I said it earlier. Chestnut tree. The papa tree, not the little things that get planted in your front yard of your new house. That's a sapling, that's a different story. But here's what I want to point out. If you were to divide our tree into horizontal striations, horizontal slices this way, generally speaking, there is equal amount of wood in each one of those slices, with one slight exception that I'm going to explain in a minute. In other words, if you could, by some miraculous, if you had a Jedi lightsaber and you could go through a tree, so it sliced and you could do that 4 times and hold them all in space, and then you're to take each slice one at a time and put it on a grand scale, you would find out that down here, there's 1,500 pounds of wood. In the next slice, there's 1,500 pounds of wood. In the next slice, even though it's spreading out, but there's more gaps in between, there's, roughly speaking, 1,500 pounds of wood. Are you with me? And then the top slice that is just all a million branches, 1,500 pounds of wood. Okay? Now, again, this is, maybe you all know this already, but chances are you never quite thought about it this way. So that helps you when you're painting a tree. Let me show you what happens if you don't know this. You're painting a tree and here's your trunk, and then you do something like that. That doesn't look like a tree. Let me make my mistake more obvious. Because there's too much weight here and not enough weight there. There's not enough big branches up here. This should have the same amount of wood as this. And now I'm talking about, you have to see it with your mind. None of us are going to do any of this, of course. But there's an equal. Now, with one exception, to get, again, a little bit more sophisticated. But let's start with this. Equal weight, equal visual weight at every slice. Okay? With one slight exception. Right before the first break to the first major limbs is a slight decrease. Okay, so I'm contradicting what I just said. Are you with me? But start with, they're all the same. If you don't get that, then this doesn't make any sense. Start with, they're all the same, with one exception. Often there's a little tuck, if you will. The waist of the tree comes in just right before the first big branches go out. Okay? So if you can remember that when you're painting a tree, you don't want a tree trunk that just goes, usually, that goes like that. You want a tree trunk, generally, it comes in, it has just a little tiny bit, so I'm going to say 1,400 pounds, if you will. There's at a waist, right before it branches out to limbs. Okay, a little bit like a human body. We get a little bit skinnier right here before we get wider at chest and arms. Okay, you with me? So just recognizing, and again, I invite you, I urge you, please, to take all this crazy stuff I'm saying and go out and start looking at trees and say, either Dan Nelson's nuts, or, no, that's right, that's generally speaking. Again, once again, the solution to painting trees is looking at trees. So there are exceptions to every rule I'm giving you. Do you understand that? I'm giving you the general rule. It's kind of like learning human anatomy. You know, I'm going to give you general proportions of the average human. I'm not going to describe every human. Same thing with trees. All right? So hopefully this will just help you to see trees really more quickly. When you're doing a landscape and your landscape has a bunch of trees in it, I'm hoping that this quick little survey will say, oh, there's a columnar tree, there's a spreading tree, there's a spiky tree, and you go boom, 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 and paint them more accurately, more quickly without, instead of taking 25 minutes of careful analysis, you can do 4 minutes of quick analysis and execute the tree. Is that making sense? Okay, C. Whoo boy. This is fun. Dense versus permeable. Now, permeable means it has holes in it. You can see the sky. Now, if some of you follow me occasionally online, I have this little personal war against the term skyholes. Everybody know skyholes? Everybody heard that? What do you call it? Bird holes, okay. Yeah, okay. Everybody else, you've heard the term? It's pretty ubiquitous among painters, and we're going to demonstrate that later. And by beef, especially because I paint cityscapes so much, many times when I've got a hole in a tree, it's not sky behind it, it's a building. So then it's a building hole. Or if it's somebody said, whatever you do, don't let your donkeys get loose behind the tree. Some lady said that in an AOC class. Can you believe that? I can't believe the crudeness of some people. I'm sorry. I thought that was so funny. That's why I shared it with you. So don't let your donkeys get loose behind the tree because, then never mind.
What's another word for donkey?
So I think they should be called tree holes, not sky holes, but that's the end there. I've brought you into my little personal revolution. They did not invite me to the committee meeting when they came up with this name. So there you go. Traditionally, we call them sky holes. All right. Box number C. Dense, opaque, or opaque versus wholly or permeable. Where do we put the sky holes? One way to think about it is this. That if this is the circumference of a tree, and again, I'm just doing your basic ball tree. Okay, there's all kinds of exceptions to this, but if you're just doing your basic ball tree, then you might say, well, it seems to me there would be a lot of sky holes out here at the edge because that's where, the tree is kind of fading out at the edges. And some trees, in fact, yes, do that. Have you ever done your sky holes that way? Surely there must be more sky holes at the edge because the tree is fading out. But the surprise is, and test me on this, go out, start looking at trees carefully. The surprise is, most of the time not. All right, here's where, woohoo, I've been waiting for months to share this with you. I built this little model of a ball tree to explain, again, the morphology or the anatomy of trees. This is styrofoam, and I punched it and burned it and sprayed it and did all kinds of stuff. And this is a trunk made out of sticks. I can't remember, hot glue and stuff like that. And I'll open that in just a minute, but let me draw a diagram again before I do. I guess I can start right here. A tree, a tree with leaves. And by the way, at the moment we're talking about trees with leaves. Bare trees, another subject, but at the moment we're talking trees with leaves. A tree is not a uniform ball of greenery or leaves, okay? A tree is kind of like a beach ball, except instead of the rubber being an 2 millimeters thick, it's 3 inches thick. So if we were to slice a ball tree in half this way, we would in fact discover that more or less it's like a Tootsie Roll pop or something, okay? It's hollow. Are you catching this? This is carved out on the inside. It's hollow. And there's a dimension to the outside. This is all green. Now let me just, some of you will recognize this when I say, think about, again, ball tree, maple, oak, whatever. If you walk up to a mature tree, you walk up to the trunk and look straight up, you do not see a mass of leaves. Most of the time, you can look pretty well, unless there's a leaf right here in front. Get that out of your way. Come on, come on. Work with me here. You get that out of the way, and you can look almost all the way to the top of the tree. Why? Because on the inside of the tree, it's all empty. And some of us who liked climbing trees when we were kids, that's part of what made the climbing fun, is that when you got inside the tree, it was like your own ready-made little hideout and fort, because it had leaves all around it. Are you with me? So that's what this model is here, and bear with me, I know this is kind of cutesy, but so there's my model. See, it's permeable. You can see holes. You can't see through this here, right? Here. You see through it mostly in the middle. Is that making sense? Can you visualize that? This is kind of the way a tree is. So let me close it again. So when we're looking at a tree like this, where are you going to see the most holes? In the middle. Now, do you understand why? Because it's a sphere of leaves, of greenery, around an empty center. Okay? But once we've opened it to the middle, what do we find is, in fact, in the middle is all the big boughs and branches, right? The big boughs and branches go up through the middle. So I'll give you, here's the first real practical little tip on how to draw believable trees. And I employ this little trick all the time, say when I'm doing an illustration for an architectural rendering, and for some reason this particular rendering has a big tree in it. So let me, again, okay, and sure enough, there's a few leaves that are threatening to break camp and, going out here. And there might be a few skyholes out here, but generally speaking, most of the skyholes that we're going to see tend to be toward the center of the tree. Now, do you understand why? Okay. And lo and behold, in those skyholes, we don't see just sky, we see trunk. So I'll do this little trick all the time. Now, I'm exaggerating here to make the point, but do you get the point? So skyholes in the middle, And lo and behold, when we peek through those sky holes, what do we see? We see main boughs, major branches of the tree. Okay? So there's just, again, a quick little shorthand way of making believable trees. We're going to talk about sky holes a whole bunch, or tree holes, when we get to the painting process. But before we do there, let's go to page 2. Are you guys okay? I promise, we are going to be painting here in a little while. But I want to go over these. Oh, I just realized I have blanks coming up, and I'm not sure I can remember what the blanks are. So I was so brilliant when I made this outline last week. I don't know, 2 weeks ago. All right, now let's change subject a little bit. Let's talk about conifer or pine trees, what most of us would call pine trees. Okay? Limb growth and shape. And I've written it out there. Let's draw a pine tree. First of all, a pine tree fits some of our categories. Somewhat triangular, but in North Carolina, no, not really. White pine, yellow pine, not really. I think we have triangle pine tree on the brain from elementary school, from our filing cabinet, and Christmas trees, okay? So pine trees in some part of the world really are triangular. In our part of the, and I know you guys are from all over, but here in North Carolina, most of our pine trees are not triangular. But they are center stem trees for sure. That was the very first category we talked about, okay? And call me crazy, please. Don't bother, I already did. But I've studied trees a lot, and all kinds of trees, and I have figured out a formula for understanding, because I live in North Carolina, have for 30 years lived in North Carolina, done a lot of paintings, done a lot of architectural renderings, most of them for Carolina clients. And so I've had to scratch my head and said, what do these trees look like? And I'm usually a conifer. What are these white pine or yellow pine or longleaf pine, long needle, what is it? Longleaf is in North Carolina, right? Is that our state tree? Okay, well, I'm going to answer that question for you. First of all, you understand that pine needles don't absorb as much sunlight as leaves, right? So that's why a deciduous tree can grow up in the shade of a pine tree and grow up and eventually overtake. Now, where I grew up in the Midwest, it was the opposite. It was the other way around, just by the way, for what it's worth. Here's a little botany just for fun. In the Midwest, the mature, original, like, what's the word for it? Ancient, original, there's a word, I'm forgetting. What is it? Old growth forest. The pine trees are the biggest ones, and the deciduous are smaller. Here in our part of the world, the pine trees are the weed trees. They grow up fast, but then left to their own devices, the oaks and the deciduous trees will grow up among them. Why can they grow up in the shade of a pine tree? Why? Because their leaves are broad and they can capture enough light to do photosynthesis to stay alive. Whereas and as soon as they get over the pine tree, what happens to the pine tree? It's goner, it's dead. Okay, so that's significant because even the branches on a given pine tree suffer that same fate. As soon as a pine branch doesn't get a lot of sun, because the needles don't absorb a lot of sun because they're skinny, as soon as a pine branch gets in the shade, it's a goner, okay? But before it's a goner, let me describe how pine branches, I've interviewed pine branches. I said, tell me how you feel. And they say, we want to grow to the sun. So pine branches all want to grow toward the sun. Yay! Pine branches growing toward the sun. They all want to grow up. Okay, this will help you. Forgive me for being stupid simple, but this will help you draw pine trees. The branches want to go up, but guess what happens? After a while, they get too heavy. We wanted to grow up, but we just couldn't bear the burden. So they start growing down. So this yellow pine, white pine, longleaf pine, this is the shape.
Like a midlife crisis kind of thing?
Pardon?
Like a midlife crisis?
Yeah, kind of like a midlife crisis kind of thing. And then, good news, after their midlife crisis, if the branch stays alive long enough and it gets tucked out underneath so it can still see the sun, guess what? It goes up again. Yay. Okay, so forgive the silliness. I'm driving some of you crazy, but some others I'm entertaining, so be nice to me, okay? So So the resultant shape of most of the branches on a pine tree are S-curved. They want to go up, can't bear the weight. Let's say last long enough, then at the end they go up again. So that's the general shape. Now, up here at the top of the tree, these are all young, happy branches. They're just growing up. They don't know that their day is coming when they're going to go down. Okay? And then, lo and behold, after a while, no matter how well things go for them, at some point, that branch, the tree keeps getting taller, bigger, bigger, bigger. So the lower branches get more shade and they die. Oh. So when they first die, they look kind of they look like this. They're just a long dead tree, but then they stay dead for a long time, just like we will. and the longer they stay dead, the more their outer extremities fall off. So you didn't know this was going to go so deep, did you? So a newly dead branch might stick out that far, but a longer dead branch will only stick out this far, and a longer than that, and a longer than that, and a longer than that. So if you want to paint a believable, deciduous pine tree, branches growing up, S-curved branches, dead branches go from long to short. So, and again, forgive me, you could learn all of this just by studying trees, but I'm just trying to give you a quick head start down the road. Take what I've given you and then test it. Go out and look and see if this ain't so. There's exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, this is the way it is. And how do I know all this? Not from those 4 books I got from, a little bit maybe, but just because I've always been a weird kid. There was this, it was funny. I mean, you might not think it's funny. Funny story. Years ago, made a life as an illustrator mostly, and I was working for a big ad agency here in Raleigh, and the assignment was to do painting of corn stalks and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I did corn stalks, and one of the art directors, who's the guy that, one of the account executives, who's not an artist at all, he looked at my drawing and said, corn stalks don't, like I had them green, and then they kind of turn pale, and then they kind of turn purple-red at the bottom, right where they go into the dirt like this. And this guy, who's not an artist, had the nerve to correct me. I take correction very poorly. I'm working on it. I'm taking pills and seeing a counselor. But I've come to learn this about myself. I take artistic criticisms from a guy who's blind as a bat. The point is this, it was so funny. It really did kind of tick me off. I didn't say anything. He has no idea that he's the object of my scorn to this very day. What is so funny about that is I grew up in Michigan, southern Michigan, in farm country. Farm. And as soon as this Pinocchio guy says, oh, corn doesn't do that, I was sitting on the Rundhaug's farm on a picnic bench, sitting there with my family at age 10, staring at a corn stalk. And I said, to heck, you're an idiot. I was 10 years old when I figured out that, what a corn stalk. So I'm just confessing here that, first of all, that I have issues. But secondly, that's what a weird artist does. How do I know all this stuff? Just because I've been a weird guy for a long time. Okay, so I've studied. I've had to answer the questions because I don't always have time to run out and look at a pine tree, and I know you can Google it, but I'm in a hurry. I'm being paid by the hour. I don't have time to do. So I've analyzed what things look like. So that answers that question, in case you had it. All right, where are we at? Lighting on trees. Woohoo! Now, oh wait, I skipped the part that I forgot. Okay, trunks, bark, and color. Let me see how many of these I can remember. All right, A, avoid vertical whenever possible. And I forget what B is. I'll come back to it. I'll give you a note. Avoid. Okay, A is avoid vertical. This was really a dumb mistake. C, give it a twist just for fun. Now, I'm talking here about the texture of the bark. And D, start with gray, not brown. Okay, that brown color, what color are trunks? If you're in 3rd grade, the color is brown. That's from your SOS filing cabinet. So chuck that out, say, no, 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 I do solemnly swear I will never again start with the assumption that yes, it can be brownish. Yes, they can be. But that shouldn't be your starting assumption. If you start with gray and that in your mind mentally and say, how about that? This one's not so gray. It's actually kind of brown. You should be surprised by that. Do you understand? So if you start with gray, you'll say, well, my golly, it is gray. How about that? Dan was right. It is gray. And again, take what I've said, go out and test me on this and see if it's not so. Look at tree trunks. You just think they're brown because that's what you thought they were in 3rd grade. You understand my harshness? I'm attacking the SOS symbol that we all have to fight against in our minds. Okay, and if I remember what B is, I'm sure it was brilliant and very important. I'll get back to you. That's really bad. But it shows you I worked ahead of time on this class. I didn't do this yesterday. Okay, C, lighting on trees. Wow. Now this would really be fun for us to take time to paint it, but we're going to paint a tree in a little while, so we'll incorporate this as we do it. But just real quickly, let me pause for a minute. Look at me for just a second. This was at the very top of page 1 and I skipped right over it. I don't want to go back and do it. Repeat after me. Trees are hard.
Trees are hard.
No matter what anybody says, trees are hard. All right, there. You got it? So if you feel dumb because you can't draw trees, welcome to the club. You just finally got in. And I say this, forgive me, but I kind of know how I call early journey artists, early journey painters. I know how early journey painters paint trees. The word is poorly. poorly. And I see lots of that. That's what motivates me to want to teach this class. And here's why. So first of all, because they're hard, that's why. Enough said? Enough said. But here's why they're hard. Here's why trees are ridiculously hard and why these are really bad trees. It's because you're trying to convey on a flat two-dimensional surface, you're trying to render an object that is ridiculously dimensional. Okay? And especially if you're standing close to a ball-ish tree, classic tree, that tree could be 60 feet from here to back, and you've got to compress 60 feet into one flat surface. Folks, that's hard. Okay? So, first of all, don't feel bad. If you feel like, well, I've really done some bad trees, welcome to, take a number, get in line. Why am I partly good at trees? Because I've done more terrible trees than probably all of y'all put together, okay? Of course, I was only 4. No, I'm kidding. That's part of an old joke. It's not so funny when I just yank it out like that. No, I was 14, okay? I was 14, so it's not so bad. But I have done a lot of bad trees as an adult. Let me be honest for a minute, much as it hurts. I've done a lot of bad trees. So this little diagram here, one way to create the illusion of dimension is to paint from back to front. This is just one way, okay? Paint from back to front. So I have 3 categories here. Number 1, if the sunlight is behind the viewer, let me stand facing the same way as you guys. If the sun is behind us, hitting the front of the tree, then here's what you do. Paint dark foliage first, then paint light branches, trunk branches and limbs, light, and then paint light foliage on top. Now all of that works if you are painting in an opaque medium, like opaque oil or opaque acrylic. Are there any watercolorists in here? Are you doing watercolor tonight? Are you doing watercolor tonight?
Not tonight.
Yeah, okay, good. Is anybody doing watercolor tonight? Okay, good. So we're all working ostensibly either in acrylic or oil, and we can use those in an opaque manner if we choose to, right? Okay, does that make sense? Then probably I don't need to explain the rest of this. I know you can read it, but I want to make sure that you get it. If the sunlight, on the other hand, is front of the viewer, hitting the back side of a tree, then what do? You paint light foliage first, then you paint dark trunk and branches, and then you paint dark leaves last. Is this making sense to you? You're painting the tree from the farthest point to those closest. And this little trick could really help you a lot. And I did these just really quickly. I didn't slave labor over them. They're little gouache renderings that I did for this class. And then finally, sunlight to the side. Paint the dark foliage away from the sun first, then the trunk and branches are dark and light, and then finally the light foliage. And that's the most common, the most typical. All right, take a breath. You ready? You okay? Ready for page 3? Ooh, this is the pretty page. We there? All right, D, trees. This is the last thing we're going to do before we start painting. Trees and character. If you want your trees believable, make them irregular. Make them peculiar, make them unusual, whichever word you want to use. Irregular is probably the best general word. In other words, don't paint the ball tree, like the tree ball, like I've been drawing all night so far. Don't do that. And I really did have some fun here on going through the internet. Well, even before I did internet, I have in my mind some of my art heroes. I've included some of them here just for fun. This is a little bit of art history and trees. Having taken a class about painting trees, it would be good for you to know the generally regarded by people who know maybe the best painter of forests and trees in history is this guy named Ivan Shishkin, Russian guy. He did this painting up here. This is just a detail of it. But that's just for fun. That's a name you should know. If you want to impress your friends and irritate your significant other, say, by the way, do you know who the greatest painter of trees of all time is? And they'll say, shut up. No, they'll say, no, tell me. The name is Ivan Shishkin, okay? Now, the next tree over, I've gotten written right here above it. Do you know who this tree is by? Andrew Wyeth. And you should, and again, you can look up these trees. You can just Google painting of tree Andrew Wyeth, and you can see this. And honestly, this second one here, it's just silly. I'm being artsy now for a minute. It's almost enough to make you cry. I mean, it is so like the realism, but it's not just realism. It's the character. I mean, it's just, that's beauty is a mystery. I've read so many books, enough to gag a cow on aesthetics and the theories of beauty and so on and so forth. The bottom line is nobody knows. It's a mystery. It has to do with our humanity. But that tree is I'm just jaw-dropping. Even just this little excerpt of it right here is like crazy. For what it's worth, the next one over, John F., I think, John Carlson, mid-20th century, maybe late mid, I don't know, 60s, 70s, you can look him up, John Carlson art. Again, one of the American old masters, by old I mean 20th century, okay, real master. And he does, a lot of his paintings are forest scenes and trees. One of the reasons I'm telling you, and then the last one is, bless his little heart, Dan Nelson. So it's like, people use my name in conjunction with all these others often, The sentence usually goes something like this: well, he sure ain't no John Carlson. he sure ain't Andrew Wyeth. But anyway, be that as it may, you're in my class, so suck it up. I'm here to tell you how to paint trees. And by the way, and I don't have a lot. I have, two samples of my trees here on this page. Before we start painting, though, the last point in the outline I have is F. Please do, to learn how to paint trees, study good ones, not bad ones. So I do not want you to absorb this into your inner soul. Okay, this is like, woo, I want you to have a little shake when you see. And again, I just Googled painting of trees, image, page copy. Okay, so this stuff is ubiquitous. That means it's everywhere, and it's bad. So we don't want to ever see those again, okay? If you want to learn how to draw trees, look at trees that are good. And I give you, again, just a few more examples at the bottom. Now this John McCartan, I have no idea who he is. I just discovered him just doing a Google search, and wow, that's a good tree. Now, Rien Portfleet, anybody know that name? This is one of those, he's Norwegian, I think. He died way too young, 50-something, maybe in the last 20 years. Do you know the little garden gnomes, the little guys with the pointy heads? Rien Portfleet, believe it or not, invented those. Now, he didn't invent the little figurines. He just drew them, and like 50 years ago, and somebody took his drawings and turned them into those horrible, well, now they're horrible. They're like the absolute nth degree of shtick. But Rien Portfleet is really one worth looking at, and he does some, and he's watercolor, by the way, most of the time, and he does beautiful trees. Does everybody know the name Maxfield Parrish? That's a name you should know. Everybody knows Norman Rockwell, right? Okay, Maxfield Parrish was the Norman Rockwell 1/2 generation earlier. Okay, so Maxfield Parrish painted from about 1895, and he did his last painting when he was 95, by the way. There's some good inspiration for you, and it was a good painting. He was like one tick older, but he did the same kind of thing, like Saturday Evening Post covers and stuff like that. And if you look up Maxfield Parrish, you'll go, oh, yeah, because you've seen his stuff. For instance, the cover of Princess Bride, the movie Princess Bride, the cover image is a knockoff of a Maxfield Parrish. He does beautiful trees, of course, and then there's me. and then Douglas Fryer is, again, I don't know who he is. I think he's Irish, has some beautiful trees. You can't tell by this, and you all know Albert Bierstadt, right? You should know that name. Hudson River School, German, but worked in America. Hudson River School, his paintings of the California High Sierra are still uber famous. You've seen his stuff a lot. You just don't know his name, but you can. So the point is, study. If you want to do good trees, look at some people that have done good trees. Now, granted, my trees are at least one tick more abstract than, except maybe Douglas Fryer here. I'm not trying to do what those guys are doing. I can do that. I can move a little bit toward the Bob Timberlake if I want to, but I don't want to. I'm trying to figure out how to move in a more abstract and still convey the impression of trees. All right, you ready to paint? Woohoo! That did it in an hour. Way to go. Okay. Does anybody feel like you understand trees a little bit better than you did when you came in here? Somebody you're not sure? You okay? Yeah, you did. Okay. Get up canvas and some acrylic paints. I don't care what color. Not real heavy on the green, by the way, contrary to what most people might think. Yeah, put out some green if you want. Do you have any paints? You don't have, okay. We're going to share. All I ask is that you don't, for instance, you don't dip your brush in one color and then dip it in another, more or less. You can tell they're contaminated a little bit, but generally speaking. Oh, and you don't have anything to paint on either, do you? Okay, it won't be pretty, but it'll get the job done. You can paint on, take, I would say about each of you, well, I think it'll work better. Do you really? Oh, thanks, you guys are nice. Okay, who wants, somebody want to donate a sheet of canvas? One will do, I believe. Thanks. Whew, does anybody need a drink besides me? What do you need? Oh, a paper plate you need a palette. Does anybody have a tear-off palette that you're willing to share one page with this lady? Thank you, you all. Okay, is everybody's, oh, and these guys up here need a paper palette. They can share one, I'm sure. And there's a brush. And here's a brush. And let me get some water for you. Thank you, you guys, for coming.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Here, let's put this here. And you can use more than one brush, but one will get most done. most of what you need to do.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Oh, I almost forgot to hand out one of the more important items. That is, now forgive me, when I first started this, preparing, I thought, well, I did a page that had like 6 or 7 really good tree photographs on it. And then upon further reflection, I changed my mind. We are all doing the same tree. So that'll just make things a little bit simpler. Fair enough? You may take this picture home with you if you like. If you're never going to use it again, please give it back to me because I'll use it for other classes. Fair enough? If you want it, you can have it. But if you're not going to use it again, give it back. It's a photograph of a tree.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
yep.
a real tree.
But I'll explain. Here's an irony. I don't know if any of you saw me painting out in the parking lot the last couple days, and I'll be there again tomorrow morning. Here I'm doing. I started one painting yesterday, but I wasn't being paid for that one. This one I'm being paid for, so to heck without yesterday's painting, and let's work on a commission piece. So this is just a neighborhood in downtown Raleigh, Oberlin Village, for any of you